Coming up next, as I promised, Dani Fitch, Nicole Barbera, and Greg Shields. So we'll see you in 1 minute.
Wonderful. Well, hi, everyone. I am Nicole Barbera. I am the Denver director of The Nudge, as Naomi mentioned. The three of us are so honored to go after Naomi. That was amazing. And just all of the incredible leaders and women that have spoken today. So just to give you a little bit of background of what I do, The Nudge really helps people spend their free time wisely. And we target female millennials primarily, and we text them fun things to do around the state. So I have kind of a dream job. I get to go find fun things to do. So I am so honored to be facilitating this panel today focused on young leaders and emerging leaders. I have two amazing panelists. So Greg, I will turn it over to you to introduce yourself.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. My name is Greg Shields. Excuse me. Vice President of FirstBank, the East Market. So you'll see me down in Aurora, Southeast Aurora is where I usually am. But what I do is loans. So I have the dream job as well and giving out money. Been with the bank for 10 years, serve on a few boards in the community, the Denver YMCA and Community Housing Partners, and just honored to be here and have the opportunity to speak with you all. And thank you for joining.
And Dani.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much. My name is Dani Fitch. I'm a consultant with Slalom Consulting, specifically focused on strategy and operations under the business advisory practice. For me, it's a newer role that I've been loving, and in addition to my consulting role, I think something that Greg, Nicole, and I all share in common is a passion for community. I'm also on the board for Colorado Technology Association Young Professionals, as well as the Denver Scholarship Foundation Associate Board, as well as a number of other nonprofits. So just really excited to be a part of the conversation, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I think, one thing that Greg and I talked about before this panel was really just humanizing the people that are up here beyond just kind of our names and titles. So I'll share not that fun of a fact, but just a fact about myself. I'll invite you to share the same. I am a Colorado native, so Dani, I might have stolen yours. I don't know about you.
Love it.
But those are really rare to find these days, especially among people our age. So anytime I get in an Uber and they ask me where I'm from, I say Colorado. They literally don't believe me. So I've been here my whole life.
Very true.
Dani would love to hear a fun fact about you.
Yeah, I was going to say, same. I feel like we share that fun fact, which 2 out of 3. And so Colorado native. And a little fun fact about me is that I'm actually an Ironman triathlete as well. And so having competed in 3 different Ironmans, which is a crazy long triathlon culminating in 140.6 miles. So kind of crazy, but I love the outdoors, love athletics. Feels like that's very Colorado of me. But native through and through. So my little fun fact. How about you, Greg?
You guys were right. I'm not a native, but I've been here since I was 4 years old. So I'd like to say I'm a native. Parents both are retired military. Fun fact about me is I'm a new dad. I have a 2-month-old at home. My son is everything to me now, and you see me glowing. That's my pride and joy.
Yeah.
So that's
the dad glow.
That's the dad glow for sure.
Congratulations on your Ironmans. Huge congratulations on being a new dad. So we'll just kind of hop right into it. I'd love to hear from both of you. How did you get to where you are now, kind of specifically in your career and professionally, and why do you do what you do? Greg, we'll start with you.
Perfect. So I'd say I don't think banking was one of the top career choices I had at all growing up. It was definitely to probably be in the NBA, right? But I do my job because of the people I'm able to help. I'm in the community I've grown up in. I've been in Aurora since I was 4 years old, and I'm able to actually help people that I see at the grocery store, grew up with at school, see my kindergarten teachers still around the neighborhood. So being able to serve people that are in the same community as me means a lot to me. And again, I don't think that it was something I wanted to start with as a career, but I'm so glad that I've been with FirstBank, a community bank that actually cares about the people that they employ and that we serve. So.
Mm-hmm. And before we move on to Dani, can you share a little bit of just how you got to where you are as the vice president?
I would say hard work and dedication. Without the education I got at CSU, I'd say that was the first thing, was my education. And then from there, obviously, hard work as FirstBank, growing as our management trainee program. Coming as a kid out of college, not knowing anything about banks or banking, lending. I know people looked at me like, who is this kid? And he doesn't know at all what he's doing. So learning my job and learning the trade was really the biggest thing I could do. Taking the time to understand it. I know we're going to mention it earlier, fake it till you make it. Yes, it's something that's real, but I wanted to make it, so I had to actually learn the tasks. So I think, thank you for going back to that, is just making sure I knew what I was doing and understanding the why behind the things I do in my job.
Dani?
Love that. Well, thanks for sharing. Yeah, a little bit my journey and a little about the reason why. So for me, I always view that my career, it's not necessarily a ladder, but more so of a lattice of all the different culminating steps and things along the way. And so for me, my career has been very much that. And so right out of my education, I consider myself a Renaissance woman within the business realm, is that I have a lot of different skill sets and passions across business. And for me, that really stems from a little bit of my why as well, just growing up in an entrepreneurial family. My dad had a few consulting firms over the years that were very successful. And so for me, I always grew up with this influence of wanting to, when we're at the dinner table, of wanting to just talk about business problems and how they were being solved. A little unique probably as you're growing up around the dinner table, but between that as my dad and then my mom has always been so involved and engaged in the community and trying to drive impact and raising money for lots of great causes. Those two influences for me are really kind of my reason why, as where I've landed today, specifically within slalom. But from a career perspective, for me, what that looked like was in grad school, really looking for input and for help of, hey, I've been on this realm within marketing and advertising, but I'm really curious about technology. I'm really curious about consulting. And so actually got connected with what was previously one of my bosses and most favorite people, Kristen Russell, when I was just looking for networking and advice. And she was like, actually, because of your Renaissance passions and your skill sets and just your demeanor, I think you'd be a great chief of staff. And so that for me was really a launch pad into just a variety of different my skill sets within strategy and operations, but especially just for my career and also for who I am as a person. So spent over 4 years at Aero Electronics, really within that global chief of staff role, helping to lead a multi-billion-dollar business unit within Aero for a global company of 20,000 plus people. And after that, just hit this point where I was like, I really want to double down on that skill set, that drive for strategy, that drive for operations, and really solving strategic problems, but with a lens on community impact. And for me, that's really been why I've landed at Slalom, is because the vision and mission of Slalom is to be one of the most impactful companies in Colorado. And so for me, what I love is that I get to double down on my skill set, but then also of strategy and operations and solving those problems, but also knowing that I'm contributing to the community that I love so much. I grew up here, obviously still live here, and so getting to know that who I'm helping is directly like you said, the people in the grocery store, the people that you'd see, at different events and things like that, that just really lights me up and is something I'm really encouraged to do at Slalom. So a little bit of the how I got here and the reason why and my influences from my parents growing up.
I love kind of the common theme of service and giving back and just kind of getting to where you are. I'll jump in a little bit and, I got a piece of advice really early on. I think I was in college, and it was that it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. Mm-hmm. And at the time in college, it didn't make sense to me, right? Like, you're studying what you're studying, and it's all about taking the tests and learning all the things. And we'd have these amazing speakers come in. I studied advertising and marketing along with sociology, and we had the founder of Chipotle come in because he lives in Colorado. And I remember every single amazing speaker that we had. At the end, they would share their contact info, and they would be like, "Reach out to me." Yeah. Nobody ever does. I'm giving you my personal email, my personal number. Nobody ever reaches out to me.
Right.
And I didn't really want to at the time, but I really pushed myself to reach out to them. And some of those folks that I reached out to from keynotes in college led to my first internship and my first job. And I've really, carried that throughout my career. My former organization, the Blackstone Entrepreneurs Network, was all about helping CEOs and mentorship. And so I knew I had access to these people that at my phase of my career, I would not otherwise have access to. And And even now at the Nudge, in a totally different realm, those people have come back around to offer me, new opportunities, board opportunities. And so I think a tidbit for those who are mentoring young leaders or those watching who are young leaders, really take that to heart, because at the end of the day, it is about who you know, and then you get your foot in the door, and then you show them what you can do, and then you get yourself to the next level. So just kind of wanted to add that in about kind of my why and how I got to where I am. So just kind of jumping right in, we talked about this when we were prepping for this panel, and I think, the whole idea of young leaders, there can kind of be a negative connotation around that. Maybe a blockage between different generations, maybe people assuming that you don't know as much as you know, or that you're not as confident as you really are. So, with that kind of negative stigma in mind, that isn't always the case, and we'll talk about the positives. How do you overcome that, and how do you deal with that as a young leader? Greg?
It's perfect. So I'd say I think it does have a negative connotation. Just because you're young doesn't mean that you're not a leader. I think leaders come in all forms, ages, ethnicities, races, sexes, it's not necessarily, again, what you know, who you know, and we all have different experience, different lived experience. So just because you've been in a position for 30 years, I may have seen something completely different in another industry that could teach you something. So I think a big important thing for me is that even though I may be mentored and a mentor to others, I can learn from both sides. My mentee I could learn from, my nephew I could learn from, all the way up to my mom, my dad. So the importance of listening is even more key in that respect. Another thing I would mention for emerging leaders, and I guess the young leadership, is that you do have to learn. You do have to listen. I'm not going to say I'm perfect, but I know as a leader, it's shown through my actions, not necessarily through my age. So I think continuing to show and show up is the big thing for me as a young leader. Yes, I'm young, but again, I can learn and still teach as well.
Yeah, I love that, Greg. And I think I feel so similar in all the things that you outlined, especially around the listening, especially around the leadership comes in all different shapes, sizes, looks, whatever that means. And I think some things that for me have been really helpful in kind of working through that young leadership is also getting to know myself in the same time of getting to know what are my strengths, what are some of my areas of improvement. And for me, that's been a journey of a lot of self-discovery, a lot of, there's a lot of tools out there, especially, like the Myers-Briggs or the colors or the different things that you can put into your toolkit to really be able to articulate, this is what I'm really great at, and this is what I know that I can deliver. And for me, one of the key aspects is actually the SciPab training from Naomi and Mandel Communications that Naomi was mentioning before, of being able to, especially as a young leader, I think the importance and the stakes are a bit higher of when you do have that opportunity and when you are in the right rooms or having that conversation with a leader, to be able to really execute and to be able to really communicate your ideas well in a way that's really authentic and engaging, and to the point to where that really pushes aside any kind of notions that are typically associated with a young leader of being green, of being able to execute, and really being able to demonstrate that. And so for me, I think adding some things to the toolkits, being able to celebrate that authenticity of getting to know yourself, but then also just doing a little bit of that, pushing it, of just like fake it till you make it, like we talked about, of being able to really think through, like, well, I am young, but I'm going to use that to my advantage, and just I'll bring a fresh perspective. I'm going to be able to, tackle this in a new or different way, or I'm open to learning. I'm curious, so I'm a little more malleable. Like being able to, on the reciprocal, really use that within a strategic lens to further the conversation and relationship is some things that come to mind for me.
I so echo what you both said, and at my former organization, I received the offer of a promotion one time, and I felt that imposter syndrome, which we'll talk about in a second. I didn't feel like I was prepared. I didn't feel like I was qualified. And I was talking to one of my mentors, Larissa Herda, who was the CEO of TW Telecom when they went public. And she said, I was talking about how I was so much younger than the person in the role before me. And she was like, to your point, use that to your advantage, right? She was like, I would go into rooms with people when I was the CEO of TW, and it would be all the top CEOs in the nation, and the president, Barack Obama, I think was the president at the time. And Barack was talking, and she raised her hand and asked what an acronym was, because she didn't understand it. And she didn't understand the conversation because she didn't understand this one acronym. And they explained it. And then afterwards, she said almost every single other CEO, she was the youngest in the room and she was the only female in the room, came up to her and they were like, I am so glad you asked that question. I had no idea what that meant. And so, you know, being not afraid to ask questions, know what you don't know. I think Naomi's point of Dani asking such great questions, I've seen that in action. She absolutely does. Don't be afraid to use that, because, you know, if you don't know what they're talking about, just ask.
Exactly.
I think that's really, really kind of the way to go. So kind of on the flip side of this imposter syndrome that we've been talking about, this fake it till you make it, how do you guys feel that as a young leader, and how do you deal with it?
Yeah, I think for me, I know we were talking about this a little bit before, is I think the imposter syndrome for me is always really actually linked to when I'm growing. And for me, it's you know, not necessarily, I feel similarly to Naomi that I feel like I was gifted with this. I don't necessarily ever feel like I can't do this or I have a limitation on my ability to be able to grow into that. However, I will say that that imposter syndrome, for me, what that shows up as is a little bit of the, ooh, I'm uncomfortable. Like I know that I'm in a situation where I haven't done this before, or I'm with people that I really respect and that they're awesome, and I'm in this room like, whoa, like I belong here, question mark, statement, exclamation point, all at the same time. And so I think for me it's just like that combination of all those things. But I think combining or knowing and being able to recognize it and say, well, okay, is the imposter syndrome just really my voice to be able, that I'm just going to be able to recognize it and realize it, but then compartmentalize it to put it into its own area that really then is that gut feeling check for me personally of saying, I'm growing, and this is actually probably a good thing because I'm in that new room of people I admire and respect, because I'm delivering something new and different that is not just within my comfort zone. So I think, I don't know, for me, I think the imposter syndrome is just an area of growth or a voice of growth. But I'd be curious if you experience that differently, Greg, or what you think.
I actually think you hit it right on the head. I think the imposter syndrome comes from a place of uncomfortability. And like you said, if I'm uncomfortable, that probably means that I'm growing, which I've really appreciated over my career, is that when I'm uncomfortable, I know I'm being tested in some way. And what that forces me to do is show up.
Right.
So it's a challenge to me. If I'm faking it till I make it, what do I need to do to get to a point where I know I'm going to be able to not fake it anymore? I'm comfortable in my own skin, coming from a place of authenticity. And as you mentioned, I think knowing that I belong. Maybe I'm the youngest in the room, but I feel like I can handle my own, right? I could hold my weight. So I think that's a big piece of fake it till you make it, is that if you're uncomfortable, it's probably a good thing. It's a testament to you being in the place that you're probably going to grow at the end of the day, or learn something if you do fail. And I don't think there's a place of failure if you fail. I think it's just you're learning something at the end of the day.
Yeah, 100%. I think just for me, something I wanted to add too is like the faking it part. For me, I guess for me that's synonymous with confidence. However, I guess I don't want to give the impression that it doesn't mean that you can't ask for help. That it doesn't mean that you can't be curious and ask those questions, or be able to pull together that network and that tribe of people around you, whether that be in a work scenario or just, you know, people like you two now for me, where I can say, have you dealt with this before? And can I learn from you? Because I'm uncomfortable, because I'm learning. To being able to really, you know, fake it, but not necessarily fake it to where, like you're saying, that you're not authentic at the same time. So for me, just wanted to expand upon that. But Nicole, do you feel the same way, or how does that show up for you?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. And just to add, you know, something new to this topic, we were just having a conversation with someone before this that you'll hear from later today. And I've had this conversation with so many other non-young leaders. I won't call anybody, I'll call them a seasoned leader. I don't think that imposter syndrome feeling ever really goes away. I just don't know if it's talked about as widely when you get more seasoned in your career. And so, you know, I can't say from experience, I am younger, but I have talked to so many of my mentors, people who I've met in the community. I don't think that ever really goes away. And like you guys both said, that's probably a good thing, because you're just pushing yourself. If we were all comfortable all the time, we probably wouldn't be here right now. This whole thing wouldn't be going on. We really wouldn't get anywhere. So absolutely relate to both of those answers and think it's really important for people to talk about a little bit more. Like Greg's been talking about that vulnerability piece and just, faking it till you make it, but also asking those questions. So kind of, one more question on this topic. What would you say is the most challenging part of being a young leader or just a leader in general?
Would you like me? I can.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I'd say the hardest part for me is showing that I know what I'm talking about and gaining that respect. I think the biggest piece for me, starting again as a management trainee with my position, was showing respect. In order to gain respect, I had to show respect. People take the time to train you or to teach you or mentor you. The least I could do is listen to you and learn and know that you are coming from a place of a position of experience, right? So that's been one thing that's really been a launch pad for me as a leader. Additionally, what I would say with the piece of faking it till you make it, but also knowing what you're talking about is learning. You have to study whatever you're doing. You have to become the expert at it. I think that's the part I always have struggled with, is having to make sure I go back, and if I don't know the answer, let's circle back and get the answer, right? So what would I actually pass to you? And
Yeah, I think for me, some of the, misconceptions or challenges really do stem from that youthful aspect and being, I'd say, like traditionally placed. Like there's been a few scenarios so far in my career where I was, in a role where I was meant to be presenting the solution. However, people thought that because of my youth that I was there to get coffee. And so there's those things that do, just kind of situationally happen, that just trying to guide through it. But I think for me, some of the things that, from the challenges perspective are also the areas of opportunity where, like you're saying, if you are, doing the work, like really putting in, I think for me, it's like the mental work, the spiritual work, the actual execution work, and doing what they say you're going to do. Those are some of the ways to kind of navigate through some of those challenges while also using it to our advantage, like we're saying. So I guess I'd be curious, Nicole, what do you feel like you've had similar situations, or what does that look like?
Yeah, for me, honestly, being completely kind of transparent and vulnerable, I think the most challenging part of being a leader in general is comparison. And I don't love that answer, right? Because we live in a community, we're very lucky to live in a community where everybody is so supportive and helpful, and we've talked a lot about mentorship and all of that. Deep down, there is always comparison. And that's just something personally that I think I work on really hard, because I don't want that to be a thing. And just, hearing how many things other people do, how many boards people sit on, where they're at their career at that age. I think it's just natural to have a little bit of comparison. And again, something that I don't know if it's talked about quite enough. And so then you get really down on yourself and you feel isolated. Am I the only person who thinks this way? Am I the only person who is comparing myself? I love being a leader. I love being a young leader. I've always loved management and leading teams. I love learning, to your point. I think that is so important to really, get to know what you don't know. But at the end of the day, I do think the biggest challenge for me is that comparison piece. And that's just being completely transparent.
And I
don't
feel
know if
that
you
way.
two feel that at all.
I totally feel that way. And especially when it comes to, what was talked about earlier today of do I check all of these boxes? Am I ready? Am I, on a piece of paper, is someone going to be able to recognize that I can do this? Even though that my resume says that instead of, 15 plus years of experience, that it's on the 10 minus, whatever that number looks like for you, of being able to recognize, I can do this, and being able to really believe in me, and to know that, to, have the actions and the pieces of paper speak in addition to just who I am as a person. I feel like that challenge so much, especially the comparison aspect too. And I think for me, also adding to, finding your tribe. I think at any stage in your life, but especially as a young leader, I think for me, the divide is just a bit wider within our age bracket of, my experience is there's friends that I know and that I have that are just not as career minded or not as career focused or wanting to be a leader yet. Maybe a leader is something that they'll stumble into, eventually in their career. So by being someone at a younger stage that is so intentionally wanting to be a leader, then, now, and in the future, being able to find the tribe, I would say, and people that I can really connect with and be motivated by, and have not necessarily to compare, but also have like be like, you're motivating to me. Oh my goodness. Like you are someone that I really want to spend some time with, because while I so value mentoring and having that mentee-mentor relationship at those different stages, I think also having it when you're at the same stage and that peer-to-peer kind of mentoring or relationship can also be even, you know, as impactful as a mentee-mentor. So I think for me, just that challenge of comparison, but then also just finding your tribe, I think for me too. So I'm really grateful, especially for a day like today, where I'm like, gosh, like thank you for the gift to Greg and for everyone of bringing together like people that can be that tribe.
Yeah. I love that. And I think just quickly to kind of wrap up this topic, just what you said right now really resonated. At my former organization, I was the only one on my management level. And at times that felt amazing, right? Kind of the ego in me was like, this is awesome. I can do this on my own. I moved to the Nudge where I am currently, and there are 9 other women in other cities running their cities, and we're all the same. And not the same, but we're all doing the same role. It has been the most transformational and empowering career move of my life, because I have these 9 other badass young women who are so inspirational and pushing me every single day to be better. And I learn from them and they learn from me. And so finding your tribe, whether that's, you know, internally at your organization, outside of it, something like this, so important. I love that you brought that up.
Totally.
So, you know, we've focused on some challenges of being a leader. There's also a flip side where it's super fun, and we get to experience a lot of positivity. So I would love to just hear kind of what you enjoy most about being a young leader, or what you're most proud of at this point in your career. And Greg, I'll hand it over to you.
I'd say as a young leader, the biggest thing I love is implementing change. I work for a company that has historically done things very similarly to what they've done in the past, but being in a position where I'm actually able to implement change, where my voice is heard and respected. Again, I'm younger than most of the people that have been in my job. Some of the people when I came into the bank were 25 years of experience, and I'm walking into the job at 21 years of age. So that's, I think, coming to a position of, hey, I can actually make a difference and my voice is valued, makes you work harder, right? When I'm able to say, I think this should be changed, and it actually is heard. So I think regardless of your age, if you are in a position of leadership, you should feel in the place that you can speak and be heard, and whatever you say is actually taken as something that could be done.
Yeah, I love that. And I think for me, what I'm taking away is from yours, also a little bit of mine too, is also surprising people and kind of bucking misconceptions, and being able to be in that role where if on the negative side, if people are doubting you or if people are thinking that you're too green or inexperienced, on the flip side, on the positive note for me, I love being able to be like, to have people be like, whoa, what? Like, who was that? Like, what did she just say or do? And like, she's how? Okay, cool. Like being able to really, I guess, surprise people, and also being able to have in my own perspective, wow, like I love where I'm at, but also I love how much more there is to go. And having that ability to really think in the long term and being able to dream big now and know that, hey, I'm on a path that I just want to keep chipping away at that dream and keep going. So for me, I guess the surprising, the misconceptions of bucking the system a little bit, but also knowing like I have a lot more that I want to do and I can't wait.
That's amazing and so inspirational. I love to hear that. I think mine is honestly the people that I get to meet and the rooms that I get to be in. I touched on it a little bit before, but I have met the most amazing humans throughout my career and throughout my leadership journey, whether it's mentors, whether it's the 2 amazing humans sitting next to me, being able to participate and have these conversations, I just think will serve us so much throughout the rest of our lives. So we have time for one last question before I bring Greg back up to ask us a few questions. So, if you could just tell your younger self one thing, what would it be? I'll let either of you start.
I'd say, I've heard it, Greg said it earlier, is be authentic, be yourself, and you are or I am enough. Again, I think the comparison part that you had mentioned earlier is we're inept to also compare ourselves to, I don't know if I can actually do this. They have so much more experience, but I am enough. So I'm able to, that's, I think, learning yourself, learning your strengths and working on your weaknesses is huge. But be yourself. I think if I was to say, Greg, 18 years old, you are enough and you can be as successful as you want to be. And one last thing would be to be human. As a leader, you have to understand that people show up on the worst days sometimes, and you have to respect that, and also know that you may show up as a leader sometimes not being at your best, right? So be human and understand, show empathy, and understand that we all go through things in life, but at the end of the day, we're all human, and as a leader, we should be able to respect that, right? So.
I love that. I love that. And I say similarly, but something my mom always says to me, especially when in moments when I need to hear it, is just be true to you. So I think for me, that's very similar to the be authentic, but for me, it's part of that truth and part of that authenticity for me is also, if I were to tell my younger self, is like trust in your gut, like trust knowing that if you're motivated, like just keep going. If you're feeling like you really want to achieve all of this, like you can do it. Like just being able to really be true to that inner voice that is just motivating. I think that combining with just the notion of just being real, like you're saying, and also for me, like that being limitless of that's what I would always, it's something I always say to myself, especially whenever I'm training, is like the only limits that you're putting on yourself are the ones that like are in your own head, and that everyone else's limits are theirs. And so being able to really self-actualize, to be able to know like your limits are determined by you. So I think the combination of those two things would be what I would like to say, hey, younger self, you got this. What would be yours, Nicole?
I think for me, it's just kind of that it will all be okay and it's all going to work out. There have been so many moments in my life where a door closed and I didn't realize that a bigger, better door was going to open, and I didn't trust in that, even though I know that's how life goes and I know that's how life works out. I think that if you are intentional enough and you put in the work and the time and the learning, it is all going to be okay. You are going to end up where you need to be. I wholeheartedly believe in that. And so I think, what goes with that is just live in the moment and enjoy where you are at that phase of your career, who you're with, who you're around. Naomi spoke to, just being where you are right now. I think that's very all-encompassing. So, Greg, I'll invite you up for some Q&A.
Greg.
Well, first of all, I know when something is perfect to leave it alone. And I'm not blowing smoke. I've been watching you. I've been living through you. Let me get over here so I'm not in your shadow.
No, it's all good.
I don't want to be in your shadow. No. But what I heard and what I felt was three amazing human beings tell the world what it's like to be in your shoes without making them feel lucky to be hearing you. So the humility at your young age is off the charts. And the way you speak with one another and how you've been speaking to the people that are tuning in, I mean, all I can say is wow. And I'll just say it. I wish I had half the moxie that you all have at this age. And I know we had a nice conversation yesterday, Greg, about some things. And when I really started to turn a corner was when I pulled my head out of my you-know-what, right? Yep. Well, yours are nowhere near that area. And I'm just saying, and all kidding aside, I'm sitting in the break room with Emily and Dr. Rahman and my wife Tammy and Emily, and all they were looking at is like, who are these people? So humbly, I say thank you. I know you've prepared for this. You showed up better than I would have hoped, and I believe that the folks that are watching are inspired by who they can be if they just follow a little bit of what you've shared. So.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you for the gift of being here. It's been such a treat.
Yeah. And I will say, I certainly would not be where I was without mentorship and without people kind of paving the way. And that was one of the questions we didn't get to. But I think that we all take that very seriously. And that's probably where we get, some of our humility and just kind of learn these amazing things that you just said to us. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for the gift of representation too. I love how this whole segment is around young leaders, and you gave us the opportunity to represent ourselves and to really be able to say, hey, this is how we view ourselves and this is the way we think. And that's such a gift too, just in any conversation, just that representation. So thank you.
Well, when the three of us were on camera doing the Servant Leadership podcast, we talked about mentorship, and I believe you mentioned Greg Greenwood as one of them. We all know Greg. And you mentioned your father and another man in your life. And Greg, I'd like to give you an opportunity, because you didn't have a chance to, when you think of mentor, who has helped Greg Shields get to where Greg Shields
It's
is?
very cliche, but my dad. My dad is my biggest mentor. It sounds cheesy, but you watch your parents, right, as you grow up. And my dad has always been a man of humility. That's the thing I think
That's
is
who
huge.
you get to be for your son.
Right? That's what I hope to be, right? But yes,
Please be humble.
Yeah, I try, right? And it's like, I just think you throw out that narcissist card.
Yeah.
There's no need to act like I'm better than anyone else, because I'm not. I think I'm not worse than anyone else. I know that. But I also don't think I'm any better. So I think that piece of humility that my dad shows, being a servant leader, I'm not going to tell my staff or my underlings that I'm not going to do what you, like, if you do it, I'm going to definitely do it by your side. I'm not above any work. And if I'm going to do it, if I tell you to do it, I better do it myself, right? So my dad has just been a huge inspiration in my life, and very present, and I say my dad.
Well, moms, dads, I mean, seriously, I've said this since I started this series. If you're listening, when you can be the parent you know you can be, this is what you can create. When you stop being the parent because you're all about yourself, you can figure it out. And by the way, Greg, when you started sharing about your father and you mentioned about the narcissist card, something just came to me, and it was, how do we keep from needing to throw away the narcissistic card? Don't have one.
Don't have one at all.
Don't
Exactly.
become one. And you know, I didn't have that. I didn't have that knowledge and that whatever from being there. But anyway, it's just. I couldn't have imagined this part going as well as it did. And not that I didn't have any confidence, but just to hear how you guys are articulating what you want others to hear and feel and see and do, just beautiful. Just absolutely beautiful. So with that, I thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll take this opportunity to move us into the next section.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Perfect.
So you heard what I heard. I hope you were moved to do what they have done in their careers, and listen to what they have shared with you. Take a little bit of that and put it into where you're going, and maybe you'll get there quicker. Maybe speed isn't all about what you want, but 3 beautiful examples as young leaders and emerging leaders in our world today.